be brave, my son, I'll be home soon. The boy held on to hope till he got that awful news. And as they folded up the stars and stripes, 21 guns pointed towards the sky. As the shots rang out, he flinched a little each time. Then a soldier in his best dress walked up to him, and you know the rest.
This show is brought to you by Operation Encore. Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping change the lives of our veteran community. Let me tell you a little bit about what they do. They are helping veterans get into the music industry. They're helping them learn the business, get songs recorded, and not only that, making dreams happen. You know, most of these veterans have got the idea of becoming a musician way before they went into the military. And Operation Encore is filling that gap from while they served in the military and helping them change their lives and live out those dreams. Operation Encore is a nonprofit. You can go to this link right there and click on it, give them a little help, hit that donate button, follow them, learn about all the great things that Operation Encore does for our veterans. Hey, welcome everybody to Spirits and Stories. This is Donald Dunn. Hey, so, you know, we've had a few military related episodes, and today we're going to get into a topic that I am extremely interested in. My family is into martial arts as well. So today we've got Brody Farber. He is a fighter, a martial artist, a traveler, a father, pioneer, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, and a UFC veteran. Let's bring on Brody. What's going on, man?
How's it going? Just Brody, but yeah, close enough. We'll go from there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, man. No, this is first time meeting, so it's not. I'm used to traveling, and the pronunciations of my name could be pretty wild sometimes. So it's
I bet. So why don't you give everybody a quick background, man? Where'd you grow up, and how did martial arts become a part of that life?
So I grew up in a small town in Northern California, where I'm back at now, as of recently, Grass Valley, California. And I started, my first introduction to martial arts was in Kempo Karate as a pretty young kid. It was my neighbor. He was basically set up his garage, and it was fun. It was good training as a kid. I liked it. As far as fighting goes, I don't believe there's much correlation. As we've kind of learned as things progress, you gotta do something at 100% to make it. So after that, there was basically, sorry, the headphones just got pretty loud. There was no kind of real training until later on in my life when I got done with high school.
We lost,
continue athletics. And I was looking for a boxing gym. There's no boxing gym in my area. And I found a place. There was like judo guys, sambo guys, a little bit of kickboxing. It was kind of really early on the inception. So it was a lot of just kind of learning and practicing together. I went in there, first day, absolutely fell in love with it. And it switched my trajectory to that's all I wanted to do. And moving down to San Diego and just traveling the world and training and going from there. So.
Absolutely, man. I have a lot of respect for martial arts. Both my kids have been in martial arts since they were like 6, 7. And I seen the difference between kids at that age that were in something development like that had discipline and instruction. And both my kids made it all the way to their black belt. And now my grandkids are starting that process all over again. So it's became family oriented. And then, mixed martial arts really exploded with the military once the Army finally got rid of their Vietnam style hand-to-hand combat and changed it to a more mixed martial art relation. So I've got a lot of respect. It's very, very hard and takes a lot of discipline. So growing up in your bio here, you talk a little bit about some crime and stuff. Is that stuff that was happening as you was growing up, or did that happen more after the fighting um, side of it?
I mean, a little bit before and after, it kind of led into, I mean, the truth as a teenager, I was a total shithead, just running wild, doing whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Ended up kind of starting at first, I started logging with my uncle. And
Mhm.
so that taught me kind of how to work hard and
Yep.
go from there. And then with that, I wanted to go back to school and finish high school because I wasn't really allowed at any of the schools anymore. And it just from that, it got me to go back to the East Coast and kind of finish school. I started working out, kind of cleaning stuff up, and then the physicality from starting to work out and starting to get back into school led to when I got back and predominantly lifting weights and being physical that way, where I
Mhm.
wanted to turn it more into a combat thing
Yeah.
and looking, more into that route with the discipline and everything like that. So. Um, it helped dramatically keep me out of that
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's yeah, it was big on just structure, discipline. When you've got to train, when you've got to do this stuff at a high level, you can't be fucking around and doing a bunch of dumb shit. So
Yeah.
um,
And there's repercussions. That was the cool thing about the school that my kids went to is if you were struggling with grades and stuff like that, when you came to karate class, they made you sit there and work with the black belts and get tutored versus getting the karate classes. And you don't get the lessons back until you bring your grades back up. They were very big on school and
yeah.
just not getting in trouble in general. And I think that thought process also put it in the kids' mind, hey, look, I got to work hard away from here too, not just while I'm here. And it does. But you took it to a whole nother level. I mean, look, the combat sports arena is not an easy path to take. It is extremely difficult, a lot of competition, and you fought at some of the highest levels out there. So let's talk a little bit about how that career started.
I mean, it started with really it was that first day where I went
Mhm.
in and I wanted to train. I just wanted to check it out.
Yep.
And it was like instantly, when you're like, I mean, now people don't even realize because I don't think a lot of people listen to the radio anymore, but like back in the day, you're listening to the radio and you're flipping through the stations and you hear that song and you're like, okay, this is the one.
Hmm.
Where I kind of thought I was doing what I wanted to do, but I was like, no, this is what I want to do. Like this is my thing. And it was instantly, I think my first week, I'm like, when can I fight? They're like, what are you talking about? You just started. And but that was a little bit the beautiful thing back in the day. If you were strong, athletic, and willing, and you ended up with the right connections, the entry level into say a professional fight isn't like the entry level into a professional, football player or nothing like
Right.
that. It's not a lot of money or something, but if you're willing, they'll pay you a little bit of money to fight someone. So it kind of
Yep.
started out where it was like we started going to Tijuana, Mexico, and doing fights down there. So we traveled down south, go across the border, and yeah, get paid a little bit of money to fight. It usually cost more to travel down there and the expenses than what you made. But
Yeah.
that was the inception. I was fighting. I mean, I say professionally. I don't think it's really profession. It's professional until that's all you do and you're actually making a living enough to where a
Hmm.
lot of people are like, oh, it's a professional fighter. They maybe sold some tickets or something, or they got paid $200. It counts, but it kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
So early on, it was like I was doing professional fights, not making enough. Most of the time spending more. But it was really just like I wanted to get in a fight as much as possible, as often as possible, and it started off really in Tijuana, doing a lot of fights down there from bare knuckle to when they started implementing the gloves, multiple fights in a night. They had them at senior frogs to take. It was like race tracks and bars and arenas, and that was yeah, that was really where I started to Yeah, that's still where most of my fights were. We're down in Mexico. So
Yeah. I can completely relate to that. When I came in the military, I enjoyed fighting too. I didn't have to have a reason. I just enjoyed it. And so when I went in the military, it wasn't surprising that I took up boxing and started boxing on some of the post teams and stuff like that. I wanted to go all army at some point, and
mhm.
man, I learned there's some badass dudes up there. So
Yeah, the Army has a very good uh, boxing team and wrestling team.
yeah,
They were always at they were at our college wrestling room all the time, grabbing guys, trying to grab guys for sure.
yep.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean the one of the guys that beat my ass, he ended up going all army wrestling,
yeah,
and he was damn good. He was damn good at both. But that's
yeah.
he lived and breathed it. I had some great times. Those sports, man, they're completely different. You lose in a football game or something like that, and you can walk off and kind of lie to yourself and say, well, it wasn't me, it was that guy's
Hmm.
fault, or it was the other guy's fault. But if you lose in an individual sport like this, man, it hurts when you're standing there in the center and the other guy's arm gets raised, because then you start thinking back, did I train hard enough? Did I
Hmm.
do this right enough? Did I take it serious enough? Because and all these resort back to yourself. They're all individual things that you need to prepare for. Um,
Yeah.
when you're going into these fights, say down in Mexico, at that point, were you taking the training side of this very serious too, or was it just fulfilling your desire to fight at that point?
I was taking it as serious as I knew how to take it.
Yeah.
So same thing. There wasn't like very good teams and organized training and managers, and you didn't know necessarily what to do.
Mhm.
But if there was a class or people wanted to train or what I knew I could do to the best of my ability at that time, I was doing. I was taking it serious. If I look back in like how serious or the structure of the training or the different disciplines and stuff, definitely not. But with what I had access to and what I could do, yeah, most definitely. So
Yep. And then at some point, I don't know if we're jumping ahead here, but you became a father, so you've got a family that's getting involved, and so now you've got something I'm familiar with, the outside distractions. When I was fighting, I was married, had kids, and had all those things going on as well.
hmm.
Did that come after the when you became more professional and was fully doing this full time, or was this as you were entering this arena? Did the family come into this?
So it was different. So my oldest daughter, who is actually I had her when I moved to the East Coast, my
Mhm.
last year of high school.
Okay.
So that was kind of pre, and I didn't convince them to move to California until she was about 8 years old.
Okay.
So with my oldest daughter, I would only see her every like 2 or 3 months, or even so I'd fly out to New Hampshire. I would see her for that time, fly out there and pick her up. So it wasn't, and we weren't married, we weren't together.
Mhm.
So it was, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was different. My other daughter, I had her later on, kind of
Mhm.
actually as I was leaving fighting,
Yeah.
and so they didn't have a huge impact on the fighting. Definitely, my second daughter at that point, the kind of realizing the risk reward ratio, and at
Yeah.
that point already having all the fights and being in the game for so long, that like, do I really, am I going to take this serious enough to continue or not, and how important it is. So it had to do in that way, but both of them were definitely at different points, and yeah, it
Okay.
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, family plays a big role into anything you do. That part of it doesn't matter. It's the balance that comes about with it. So if you can figure out that balance, you can be successful with anything. I've heard people use it as an excuse, saying, well, I couldn't do this because I had to focus more on my family. It's just
Mhm.
about balance. That's what it takes. And it seems like everything was really balanced with you, because you still had your family time and you still had time to focus dedicated strictly on training. And I can relate from that as well. Being in the military, I wasn't around a whole lot. We're not I mean, we're still married, but my wife's and kids are in Georgia, and I'm here in Missouri taking care of my mom. So we're
Hmm.
used to being apart. So yeah, and when I'm away, I can focus on myself, and
Hmm.
when I'm there, I can give that time to the family. And I think that's a perfect way to do it, because each person gets that 100% when they're around, and that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I've
So
seen, I think a lot of guys that do well, they have the family support and but they're able to go away
yeah,
and kind of handle what they need to handle if they've got a confident, you know, if the relationship's well, and it helps too because it keeps the guys, especially the young fighters, from being distracted, from going out, doing all the things they shouldn't be doing. If they've got the family and then they're confident to be able to leave them and do what they need to do, and both sides are good with it, that's where I've seen the guys be the most successful. I've
hmm
seen a lot of that, just the chaotic relationships too, just distract and destroy fighters. And as far
yeah,
as or guys, they get to a point too where they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I want to be with my family. I can't be away from them anymore. So it's definitely that fine line, and it's really cool when I see the guys that have it worked out well and they have that really solid relationship. And
yeah.
I feel like those guys, when that's in place, do the best by far. So.
Yeah, you need that, you need that structure, and I always joke with people, but I always do say, behind every great successful man, there was a great successful woman, that
Mhm.
helped push that, supported, and so forth. And maybe it's not necessarily a woman; it could be kids, it could be, you know, uh, other family members, but you have to have that support. And the industry you're in is tough. The day after a fight is not a day that you're getting up and going running and training. Most of the time, I'm sure you're trying to recover, and I know I woke up many days after fighting and felt like I got whiplash and everything else from um, just getting my head snapped back so many times. But let me ask you this. When you started taking this more serious and you said, okay, I'm going to do this as a career, and I think at that level, it you have to have a mixture of everything. You could fight at the level I was fighting at and not have a mental part of it to go along with it. You have to mentally train, you have to physically train, and you have to have all that balance when you're doing it. At your level, my level, I could just get in the mood, get ready, go fight, get up, go fight. As long as I was doing my cardio and weight training and stuff like that, I could get in there and go fight. Um, but at the level that you have been fighting at, you have to find every bit of advantage you can. Do you think that there's a mental program that whether it be meditation or something like that fighters incorporate into their camps and into their training?
Same thing. Everyone's so different, and there's so many variables that go in with this. You see guys be insanely successful with having everything regimented, everything like perfect. You see other guys that are completely fine with, they know the fact that the fight is going to be chaotic, and they
Yeah,
don't really need everything to be perfect, same thing, both work great to where if you can control everything, you can have an advantage. If you're used to kind of the chaos, some guys meditate, some guys see therapists, some guys rely on so many different ways. I think the biggest thing is to really know that you put in the work, you put in the
mhm,
time, you did the best that you could, that you have people around you that you can trust and kind of guide you, and you can rely on them and then when you know that you've done everything you could, that people are guiding you correctly, and whatever that be, as long as you've done it to 100%, that you're in a good spot. I think it's the doubt that creeps in when the guys know they haven't done what they needed to do,
yeah,
and everyone it's different because yeah, some people have to have everything perfect right before the fight. Some people go out and hang out in nightclubs. Some people, um, yeah, yeah, like the regiments and things like the food to the time to the sleep to the
yeah.
like to the meditation and the people around and the settings, and people can get crazy with that stuff. And so it just, yeah, there's a huge disparity kind of, and it fluctuates what people need to do and what works best for them.
Yeah, I asked that question because I've got a theory that I've been kind of working on, and I ain't talked to anybody about it. It's just been something I've been doing internally, and it's the military doesn't have any sort of mental preparedness. They rely on muscle memory. So
Uh-huh.
all the training you do, it's just to get you to see something similar, and your body just reacts to it, i.e.
Hmm.
the targets are all black silhouettes and so forth. But there's, I wonder, and this is my theory, that if there was some sort of mental training that went into this, not just all physical training, that I wonder if as many soldiers, when they came back, if they would have that ability to be able to, I ain't gonna say flip a switch and just come back normal, but
Hmm.
not necessarily be as impacted as they are currently, where if you've never been deployed, you don't know what you're getting into, and all you know is the muscle memory. There's no mental training to this.
Hmm.
And so I wonder, because there is so many sports at high levels that do bring in that type of training, and I could be completely wrong. It's just a theory, and so that's something I've been looking at. So I was just curious, if you'd seen stuff like that, and the impacts, if it helped or didn't help. I can definitely relate to not being prepared. I mean, when I remember one of my fights, I was fighting a cook, and when I came to, he was jumping up and down, yelling over easy.
Yeah.
So I do remember sometimes of not being prepared and how I felt, you know.
Yeah, and it creeps in for sure. You know when it comes time, it's like, did I do enough to, and there's still going to be the doubt no matter what.
Yeah.
But if it's and each time you go, you kind of either prove to yourself that you're doing it right or you did it wrong. So
Hmm.
that's where a lot of guys when they stumble, it's like, and it can start adding up fast. Like, yeah, oh, I did it wrong, and then they don't know what to do, and then I did it wrong, and I don't know what to do. It's that correction, and
Yeah.
that's why that in the fight game too, that confidence is a motherfucker. To
Yeah.
where if you're doing good and you're doing things right, and there's same thing. A lot of guys that they just know they're gonna win, or they find a way to win, and
Yeah.
even maybe sometimes they shouldn't win, or there was a lot of guys that we would see in the gym that works both ways, to where in the gym they're killing everybody, and come game time it's not the same, or guys in the gym that weren't that good, they really technically weren't that solid, but come game time they can fight their ass off and they find a way to win somehow. And
Yep.
there's some guys you don't even know how, but they just they can just rise to the occasion. They show up. They're in the moment. They know how to fight, and it's on. So,
Yeah.
um, but and there is a lot something. I mean, that's been proven time again is about the visualization. So you can just if you could put yourself there, if you could put yourself with your hand raised, if you can put yourself through the scenarios, that your mind, if you've already been through it and you believe and you've seen it over and over and over, that as many times as you did it physically, it helps to do it mentally as well. Maybe not as much, but close. So if you spend that time doing that, when you're resting, or when accompanied with that as an ad, it definitely helps. I don't
Yeah.
see it being a negative for sure.
No, I mean, look, at that level, you definitely have to be willing to try things and gain any advantages that you can, because everybody else is doing that same thing. They're trying
Yeah.
to find that advantage.
Uh-huh.
And the mixed martial arts world is tough, man. I mean, I couldn't think about. I used to feel that way about kickboxers,
Hmm.
and when I got into a ring, all I had to worry about was the hands, you
Yeah.
know. And then you looked at the kickboxers, you're like, man, shit, you got to defend against kicks and everything else. And then
Yeah.
MMA comes around, and you're like, shit. Next thing I know, you got to defend against chokeouts and
Uh-huh.
everything else,
It
man.
does. It changes a lot too, and it's weird in the way that you see it a lot in MMA, where there's guys that, and I remember this too because I took boxing and kickboxing seriously. I fought professionally in both as well, to where if you're just boxing another boxer or a kickboxer,
Yeah.
you can do super well against them. But occasionally there'd be some wrestler would come in, and it's a boxing day, but their rhythm is so off, their
Yep.
angles are off, they don't know what they're doing, their footwork sucks, but they
Yep.
hit you more than the guy that's the boxer because it's just odd, and maybe he's changing angles, or you see fights to where guys that are superior strikers in MMA get taken
Hmm.
out by a guy that, if it was a boxing match, the one guy would murder him. But since
Yeah.
it's an MMA match and he's so worried about takedowns and angles, and that guy's timing is weird and it's off, and then he catches this guy because he's worried about this, and
Yep.
it definitely adds a whole another element that yeah, that
Yeah.
can. That's why it's so exciting though too. So
It is. I mean, I don't watch boxing anymore, and
yeah,
that's all I ever did, other than the military combatives that's a form of MMA.
yeah,
But I know exactly what you're talking about. I was thinking back to, so on the post team when you were starting the season, we would enter in a lot of these little smokers where anybody could get into and box. You didn't have to be part of a team or anything else, and it is tougher going against somebody like that that's just out there swinging and has
yeah, yeah,
no form, and
yeah,
he goes to swing, and next thing you know, he's doing swirls
yeah,
around, you
yeah.
know, and it changes everything because it affects how you counter. It affects what shots you're willing to take versus which ones that you don't want to
Mhm,
take. And so, yeah, it is brutal. And you see it when you watch the fights too, you know.
mhm.
This the YouTube stuff that you see, the beat streets and stuff like that. That's exactly like our smokers, man. Just
Oh yeah,
getting in the
definitely.
ring, and it's crazy watching. It's like night and day. Even going watching, say, Golden Gloves boxing, how
Oh
well
yeah,
trained and disciplined they are at that level already.
yeah.
So
Those smokers used to be a big thing back in the day. I had a
yeah.
moved to San Diego, and same thing. I own a gym that I took over, a kind of one of the famous old school ones there. I didn't open it up, but I took it over, and we used to have smokers all the time, and there'd be
Mhm.
people from all over would come in, sign up. Same thing. We were right next to Miramar, so we had a ton of military guys,
Yep.
and yeah, smokers were all at the gyms all the time, and you would see some horrible fighters and you would see some amazing fighters,
Yeah.
and it was good. That's where people kind of started back in the day, and same thing. You had no idea who you were going to go up against. It could be the best guy or the worst guy, or you
Yep.
just hoped, and you're trying to match people up as best as possible. It's like, well, we don't really have a guy your weight, but he's a little bit bigger, and you're trusting you're trusting what people say too. I
Yep.
mean, we had experiences back in the day, several where it's like you just have to trust a promoter and they're lying, or you have to trust their coach and they might be lying.
Yep.
To where I remember getting really screwed over one time with my buddy, a friend who was my wrestling partner, who I got him, I think, two or three fights, and he was out of the crew from the wrestling team that I kind of recruited to fight. He was the best wrestler and absolute stud in wrestling. But for some reason, he wasn't good at defending chokes. He just, I don't know. He had a neck like this big, and but he was just made for wrestling, and he would get choked out a lot. And his first fight, he got choked out. I got him another fight. I was very honest with the promoter. I go, I got a guy. He's super tough. We want to get him a good fight. Like, I don't want, like, we can match him up with basically anybody except a good jiu-jitsu guy. He's like, okay, done, no problem. We won't get him a good jiu-jitsu guy. He ended up getting him one of like the better jiu-jitsu guys around town to do another gym a favor. I remember walking out and seeing, like, this is like early 2000s, and at the time I trained with him as well. It was one of Dean Lister, who was a top jiu-jitsu guy. It was one of his top students who was like, he walked out with a super worn out purple belt, which a purple belt in the early 2000s would be like a black belt of today by far. And it's like, dude, you know, you basically put the best jiu-jitsu guy you could find against this fucking guy. You know, it's like, and he ends up choking him out. And
Yeah.
and then same thing. I remember I had a fight in Tijuana one time where the promoter's telling me how tough this guy's gonna be. Like, he's heard how tough he is. He's heard how tough he is, and like he's really happy I'm taking the fight. End up beating him super quick, and then he doesn't want to pay me my full purse because he's like, dude, he was easy. I'm like, we didn't know that. You did, like, you had no idea. You were telling me how tough he was for the last month, and
Yeah.
because I beat him easy, now you don't want to pay me as much because it was an easy fight. Like, We didn't know that. You didn't know that. Everyone thought it was gonna be tough just because that wasn't the truth, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of odd stuff like that for sure back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. I do remember, you know, when people were talking about jiu-jitsu, that the it was hard to become. I mean, it was rare to see a black belt. You know, there was a lot
Hmm.
of people that stayed at belts for a long period. I had a major that was really big into um, fighting
Hmm.
competitively. It's what he did on the weekends. He had fight insurance, the whole 9 yards. I don't know where he fought at. He would fly to
Hmm.
places and go
Yeah,
fight. But I think he was a brown belt. Is what I think he was. I don't remember for
that's
sure.
a yeah, that's a big deal back then. When I started, I remember traveling to go to a seminar to do it from one of the Dirty Dozen, which was like the first 12 American black belts, and there
Hmm.
was like barely more than that at that time.
Yeah.
And same thing, like by the time I made it to the UFC, I was only a purple belt. Like most of the guys back then were not like a black belt was rare, and it was much harder to get a black belt back then. A lot of the
Yep.
gyms, I mean, for they want to have a good business. Just the culture of the jiu-jitsu gyms was tough.
Yeah.
Now there's definitely gyms that are tough. There's definitely gyms that are soft. But overall, same thing. The ones that are they're businesses and not fight teams. Um, there's even a lot of them that just you put in your time and you get a black belt. There's a lot of really weak black belts now.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was seriously hard. I even think back in the day they wouldn't give you one if pretty much anyone could get a purple belt. After that, you better be really good and put in time to get a brown. To get a black belt was a big deal. It's still I think the hardest black belt to get, even still, with all the martial
I would
arts
agree.
and how
Yeah.
businesses are run, but it's not like it was, and it's definitely been watered down because it's yeah the level of it. And I meet a lot of black belts just aren't really that good,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. So
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of it is about business now.
hmm.
There's not a lot of parents that are willing to take on a debt of the lessons for 18 years in hopes that they come somewhere close. They want to
Hmm.
see their kid get that black belt, and
Yeah.
these businesses know that and understand that, and they cater to
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
Especially in like the taekwondo world, where
Oh, it's so
it's
fast.
about, yeah, it's about memorizing patterns, and next thing you
Yeah.
know, you're wearing a belt. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do get it. But I still think when it comes to fighting, the part that, and you hit on it already, the part that is so entertaining about UFC is the fact that somebody can um, go in there, not necessarily the favorite,
Hmm.
and has tools to figure out a path to winning. Um, whether it be have to focus on grappling or what, compared to boxing, you're very limited to options. You either
Hmm.
have to have a stronger chin, or be faster with your hands, or better footwork, but that's about it. It's not like I can say, well, I can't hit this guy striking. Let me take him to the ground and try
Hmm.
at a whole different angle. And there is differences. Like you were talking, some people are good at grappling, some people are good at striking. But I think that has been the key to um, mixed martial arts. And you look at all the different things that are out there now besides the UFC,
Hmm.
and so the sport has taken off. Um, I feel like boxing is dead. You don't see it anymore. If a fight comes on, that's how you know it's late. It's two in the
Yeah,
morning on ESPN.
it's had somewhat of a resurgence lately, though. As much as people talk shit on it, the YouTube boxers and the most famous of them all, that's a legit boxer now, 100%, is
Yep.
Jake Paul. He's helped bring it back. Uh, he's a legit fighter. I don't if people don't like him or not, he's a legit 100% real fighter. And but like there's a lot of stuff that has gone. He's brought eyes. It's kind of had a little resurgence, and it's been cool to see because I'm a big fan of boxing. I
Hmm.
love the purity of the sport. I
Yep.
love boxing. I did a couple pro fights. My coach wanted me to focus on that early on in the beginning. I'm kind of glad I didn't. Just same thing. I had a lot of trepidation about seeing the older guys and just the head trauma. Plus, I already
Yeah.
put in so much time to mixed martial arts, and but I do love. I mean, if anything, if there wasn't the negative effects of getting hit in the head,
Hmm.
I would 100% probably just focus on boxing and and still I would probably spar every single day if I could. I love just boxing and when you really condense something to its purest form, the skill can rise above. So it's really cool to see. Same with mixed martial arts is it's so cool and so like but because there's so many things that maybe certain things and certain elements might not be as dialed in as sharp, and when you could focus on just one element, it just that thing just rises up. So I do I do really love boxing. I always love training boxing. I do love participating, but it's yeah, for me it was just that being the only option and the risk to reward ratio, I ended up kind of sticking more with the others for sure.
I do think that kind of is one of the reasons why it took much longer to get people more focused on mixed martial arts than boxing,
Hmm.
because of those simple elements. More people that didn't participate in the sport could at least follow the logic and, okay, I see what he's trying to do. I see the strategy that this guy is doing, to where coming in, never being in martial arts, never fighting in anything, and trying to watch somebody doing grappling. A
Hmm.
lot of people struggled at understanding what was that fifth move that he was setting up, because
Yeah,
until it happened, nobody could understand, why is he staying on the ground? What was he doing that for?
yeah,
And so it did struggle. And now with, just like with anything, as it became more popular, there's a lot more people out there talking about it and educating people. And you do get people that are now following the sport, and it has hurt boxing. I'm the same with you. I grew up
mhm,
as a George Foreman fan. I loved watching George Foreman fight.
mhm,
Um, there's a few other fighters that I follow that a lot of people never heard of. They got hurt earlier in their career, and
mhm.
I just enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Um, and I still feel the middleweight division is the toughest division to fight in. Versus, I mean, they've got it all. They've got the power, and
yeah,
they've got the cardio. So I
yeah.
always avoided that. My first fights was lightweight, and my last
Okay.
fights were light heavyweight.
Yeah, you get a little
I
bit
skipped
bigger.
that whole I skipped that whole middleweight area.
Yeah. No, there's something. Yeah, it's important to find the right weight. If I had to do it over again, I would have shied away from trying to get lighter at certain times.
Yeah.
I always did better with the bigger guys in the gym. If I would have, I don't know, a lot of guys just get fixated like, oh, if I'm going to be bigger, but you end up depleting yourself. You don't have the strength, you don't have the stuff. You end up getting smaller and not even doing as well to where, yeah, I would have stayed at a little higher weight myself and
Yeah.
just really focused on myself being the best and the strongest that I could instead of
Yep.
like, oh, I'm trying to get some advantage and it ends up not even being an advantage. So,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, when it comes fight time, with the way people cut weight and for weigh-ins and everything
no,
else,
it's
they're
wild.
they're nowhere near the same weight
No,
on the
it's
fight
wild.
day. Yeah, it is. I mean, we're
Some
talking
guys
20,
are
30 pound differences.
so even I saw on social media Behera who fought um this last weekend and headlined the fight.
Hmm.
So he was fighting at 85. This time he went up to 205, and I saw something where that video of him within 12 hours he was like 232 or something. Um, People don't realize how much bigger these guys are in real life.
Yeah.
Like at one point I was fighting at welterweight at 170. So I'm like 215 pounds, 6'1", single digit body fat. Like um, the guys when you see them in person, and a lot of the times it's deceiving because you see like if you're super lean on camera, you look big. It doesn't matter how so there's guys like Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell is one. There's a lot of guys that they aren't super lean, and then so you see them on camera and they don't seem really all that big. I mean,
Yeah.
and then you're next to them in person, you realize how fucking huge they are.
Yeah.
And also the way, I mean, I was just listening to Chandler talk about his next fight, and he's a 155er, and he walks around like 190 pounds. Like a lot of these guys, and they're same thing, single digit body fat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain guys that don't really do that. I think like Colby Covington's one who fights close to his weight. There's guys that don't cut a lot, but there's some guys that are immensely bigger humans than you think. You read that weight that they're fighting at,
Yeah.
it's nowhere near
Yeah.
in real life. So
Well, do you think that there should be a change in the way they do the weigh-in? Do you think the weigh-in should be closer to the day of the fight, or do you
I
think it's
think
what it is?
I mean people are always going to try and like and cheat and or not even cheat. It's not cheating. I shouldn't say that, but to kind of gain that advantage, you
Yeah.
know, and do things. I would like to see more weight classes and people just kind of weigh in and fight where they want to fight. That's where
Yep.
the UFC is there's a huge gap. I mean, you've got 185 to 205. That's
Yeah.
20 pounds. So if you're a guy that walks around at like 202, and realistically, the guys that are walking around at 202 are going to fight at 170. But like, it would be much better and healthier. Just you're not dehydrating. You know,
Yeah.
your brain will be able to sustain. You'll have more energy. It would be. I think it would be better if people were able to just all fight at wherever they were at, and it was kind of close. Maybe they had weight classes, especially now with the popularity and how many events they are. Um, 5 pound weight classes or seven or something like that to where
Yeah.
guys could just not worry about the weight because that's the fixation of most fighters. It's not the
Yeah.
fight that they have to worry about. It's the making weight, and
Yep.
it's like the camp is just diet, cutting weight. The day before or the week, they're just suffering, and they're suffering that, and then they have to recover, and it's just a huge focus that I think if they took that away, um, in a perfect world, it would be cool to see people not cut weight and just fight
Yeah.
at where they were at. So,
Yeah, because that's a big deal too, man. If you miss weight on
hmm
your career side of this, the business side of this, that's pretty detrimental. It's a big
hmm
knock in your career that says, hey, this guy multiple
hmm
times has missed weight, and it means is that guy going to be able to fight when
hmm
you set that fight up? So it has to hurt the career at some point,
yeah.
and it's not good on the body either, you
No,
know.
they pull people out too. They've stopped weight cuts. They've people get hospitalized. People pass out. There's been fight. They pass out and hit their head the day before.
Yeah.
They end up in the hospital pulling fights. One thing I've seen is knowing a lot of wrestlers that started when they were young,
Yes.
and just the cutting weight throughout the years. I
Hmm.
see them as adults and their body is just thrown off. I can tell how hormonally imbalanced they are by their body type, everything. A lot of them can get extremely overweight after their body just kind of sucks it up. I can tell their testosterone's low. The
Hmm.
way they're holding the fat is more like a woman. It's just, yeah, because you have to think too, like after your career's over, there's life after that. And just, it's dangerous enough. So without the weight cutting, without the extreme dieting, it would be beneficial. And I, I had a friend that's talking about her son going into wrestling, and I was like, until he gets like really good or he's been in, like, do not let them tell him to cut weight. Like,
Yeah.
stay away from the weight cutting. If he's not good at that weight, he needs to get better. Like, he doesn't need to drop a weight, especially growing and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Just, I mean, if it's a couple pounds and whatever, and he gets to a point where he needs to make the tournament, whatever. But the whole constant up and down and everything like that, I'm not a fan of it for sure.
Yeah, no, me neither. And you are right. That's pushed on you as a wrestler at a very, very young age. Um,
hmm
I've been in high school with kids that are sitting there spitting all the time, trying to get
hmm
any little bit of water out of their system as they can before they go weigh in. And
Yeah.
it is crazy the things, the running around with garbage bags on and so
Mm.
forth just to sweat. But yeah, Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your fights. What is a fight that if you had to say, hey, this is the fight that I remember to my grave, every detail, what fight would that be?
Um, I think one of the ones that I think it was probably because it kind of cemented that, hey, I can do this at a high level.
Hmm.
Um, and just the circumstances surrounding it. So I remember I got a call. I was fighting predominantly in Tijuana in Mexico, and I got a call about fighting in Arizona for Rage in the Cage, and it was a big event at the time. So back before the UFC, there was these kind of, and I would read about in the magazines and everything, and so I was stoked. And it was guys that were sponsoring me. They somehow reached out to them, and I had to go through all the like Tijuana. You just show up. They don't give a shit.
Yep.
You know, they act like they're doing a They don't. They'll push you in there no matter what.
Yeah.
Um, I had to do all the medicals. I had to register and pay to be a professional fighter. I remember the pay was the bare minimum. It was an absolute joke. My sponsors were like, "Don't worry about it. We believe in you. We'll give you money. Just take the fight." And the promotion was basically looking for someone to build up their guy. So he was a friend of the promoter. So he was also an Olympian in judo, and he was, I believe, like late 30s. So I'm early 30s at the time. I'm sorry, early 20s at the time. So I'm still a very much new and kind of a kid, where this is a grown man, Olympian. I'm just basically showing up for to get beat, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember even he was super disrespectful during the thing. He asked in front of me if the fight could get moved up on the card because he had something to do after the fight. So, and I remember this was when you could wear wrestling shoes to in a fight and still kick someone. So I remember going in the fight, and I remember he was southpaw. I kicked him twice in the leg, and then he was setting up for that, and I brought it up and I hit him in the head, and basically like he completely rocked him. He was out of it. His eye instantly started swelling up. Just instinctively being an Olympic level judo guy, and judo used to be a lot more ground game. It's kind of evolved into being almost all throws now. But there was a huge ground element in the past, and a lot of those guys were extremely good. So he ended up rushing me, taking me down, and I remember like hitting him in the eye, where it was, and then grabbing his arm. And I remember him giving it to me. Like, oh, I was like, this guy wants out. Like he's done. He's completely done. And he gave me a submission. Like I broke him. He wanted out of that fight. Um, Same thing. He's an Olympian. I'm fairly new at this, but he gift wrapped it, gave it to me, tapped out, and then I was like, okay, like, I can beat an Olympic level guy, a fully. He was undefeated. I was like, okay, this is something because I think before that I had success, but it was like, at what level can I do this at, you know?
Right.
And it was like, okay, I can do this at a high level. I can beat good guys. I can beat athletes. Like, okay, now I know that at least on a good day that I can compete with the top guys. So I would probably say that one.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. That makes that makes a world of sense because getting entered into these things is tough. It to be able to fight at that level. I don't even know what the number of successful people that even get an opportunity to be in the UFC, but I'm sure it's extremely low, and
Hmm.
even some of the other ones out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing I do also want to kind of get into because I'm a fan of it. I don't know if everybody is, but what is your thoughts on women that have now entered into the MMA? Because I think it is exciting as hell. I mean, those
Yeah.
girls ain't playing, and I think it's amazing, and I get also, Ronda Rousey also probably kind of brought in that following of people.
Hmm.
She was the face for a while, but if you really watch, I mean, these women are serious.
Yeah. No,
I wouldn't
she
want
was.
to.
Yeah, she was definitely the first one. So
Yeah.
I have a little I've gotten in trouble for this before, and but it's the truth. So I 100% respect and encourage if they want to do this, if women want to do this sport and they
Hmm.
want to participate, I don't like watching it personally.
Okay.
I don't like watching women fight. Um, for a long time, I don't feel they were very good. They were taking the place of people that had been in a long time, and it was just a thing. Now, though, I have to say, so there's one girl, and this also too. There could be many more, but I just don't. I don't watch the sport like I used to,
Hmm.
and I don't really, obviously, based on what I just said, a huge interest in watching women fight. There was the champ. I don't know if she's champ anymore. Shevchenko.
Hmm.
If you know who that is.
I do.
Technically, she's amazing. So when I watch her and I watch her fight, I'm like, okay, I'm a fan. She's technically very solid, amazing. I'm a fan. I will watch her fight. I don't think a lot of other times that I see that. With that too, I'm not, yeah, there's just something about it. I'm not a huge fan of watching it. I
Hmm.
do support it, but I also, and with that, the caveat, as someone that's trains people, some of my favorite, I think one of my favorite, as a trainer, was to train a woman into winning, basically helping her win a fight. Like, and straight up, I'm not a fan of it. I don't really like it. But if I'm your friend and I know how much it matters to you and I can help, and she basically came to me. She said she had, it's like she wanted to win an amateur boxing fight. It was an extremely big deal for her. She did one before, she lost. She wanted to win one boxing fight, and I trained with her. She trained her ass off for months. We got her a fight and she won. And it was such a big deal to her. And to like watch her win and to be able to help her, like I'm
Hmm.
a big fan of that and whatever I can do. But as a spectator as a whole, yeah, if I'm not your if I'm not like have a direct correlation or something or I helped out, it's not something that I usually watch or have much interest in. Um,
Yeah.
but except for Shevchenko, hats off to her. Technically amazing. I'm sure there's other girls I just don't know about. But
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah. But
I can understand that as well. Because relating it, I think the boxing side of that with female boxing is at that level. It's
hmm
you watch it and you're like, there's a lot of error, a lot of mistakes, a lot of
hmm
it's a very slower paced
yeah.
than what you're used to.
hmm
And I'm sure women were, I didn't start watching the women's side for until recently, to be honest.
yeah.
So I didn't see it as it was growing
Yeah.
and was less known. I don't know. It takes me a while to follow things because I don't want to be the guy that watches gimmicks, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like true combat sports. I got
Uh-huh.
a lot of respect for anybody that's willing to get in the ring at any level
hmm
and fight because it is not easy. Especially if you took the time to train. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I get there was a lot of tough man contests, and that's basically what the UFC was starting out. Back when Gracie was killing everybody because it was just
Yeah.
average guys entering. To be honest, they didn't really have any
He had a
structure.
superpower. So
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu, I mean, still, if you put a guy that knows jiu-jitsu against a guy that doesn't,
Yep.
and the guy that doesn't isn't a super athlete, or there's some huge strength or size disparity or something like that. If you take two similar guys and one has 6 months of jiu-jitsu, he can literally do whatever he wants to the other guy. He can, people don't realize what it is, and that's what they showed. They had Hoist Gracie, which they purposely used him as the person to fight because he wasn't like Hickson, this intimidating, strong-looking guy that they're like,
Yeah.
oh, it makes sense that he wins. They want the one that's showing the superior skills
Mhm.
and over the size and everything. And even though a lot of the guys didn't have a ton of skill, maybe at first, I mean, they were tough wrestlers or
Right.
kickboxers or just overall good athletes. A lot of them were juiced to the fucking gills too. Like, and
Yeah.
against Hoist, who was, on his Gracie diet, eating acai and 180 pounds or whatever, just choking him unconscious. So they did an amazing job at exactly what it's showing what the power of jujitsu is, against someone that's, basically a top athlete, can or cannot fight at that time. We saw both for sure. Yeah, it was amazing for that, really showing that, what jujitsu can do. And that, I think, with all martial arts, you need to practice it 100%. That's why jiu-jitsu works. That's why wrestling works. That's why boxing works. That's why when I was a kid, I thought karate was awesome. A lot of people did. As I grew up and realized that it doesn't work because you don't practice it 100%. So the structure is good, the flexibility is good, the stuff is, but it's hard to admit that you spend a lot of times doing something that's maybe not going to translate into a fight. You can't say right punch and then you're going to block or do some stuff. Like you have to know how to do things when it's going fast, the heat of the moment, the muscle memory, the timing. It has to be there, and that can only be accomplished through doing something at 100% or close to.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is that's not in boxing. When you practice boxing at 100%, there can be lifelong repercussions. It can add up quick. Jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys with fucked up necks, backs, whatever, but still the safety of it over especially if you're smart, the way things are now, like it's pretty minimal. And that's why like I always recommend jiu-jitsu to anybody if they have to pick one, if they don't want to get hit in the head. It's something that's amazing, that's helpful, and works in real life. So
and you saying that, my hat's off to the most of the referees at this level. I do feel like the referees take a better care of the fighter on the mixed martial arts side than they do in the boxing side.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fights that are let gone too long on the boxing side.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I'm not saying anybody's intentionally trying to get people hurt or anything, but they are taking a pounding, and there is a lot of trauma to the head. And I mean, look at Muhammad Ali,
Yeah, there's a lot of guys like that. And the big thing too is it's not always the concussion that's the worst part. It's the secondary concussions. It's the small things that add up. So it's like this guy's in a fight, he's gone 8 rounds, he's got hit 300 times, and they're small blows, and then he gets knocked down, he's concussed. And so you're off, and then they let him back up. And maybe he gets another one, and then he gets finished off. And it's like it's that trauma to where MMA can be more brutal, but it ends faster. And then hopefully the guys do the right things. They take care of themselves. They let it heal to get back to a proper baseline. But it's the problems occur mostly. It's that secondary, that third, the accumulation that happens, and that's where boxing can be so scary in that way.
Yeah. Well, brother, I'm gonna bring you forward and give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can follow you and anything you got coming up or going on. Go ahead and give them a shout out and let them know where they can locate you.
Right now, I would say as of recently, I kind of got back on social media. I've been pushing it there. So the best place would be just on Instagram. So it'd be Brodie_Farber. And from there, we're going to kind of build up some stuff. But if you want to follow, I've been posting a lot on there. You can always send me DMs. I always try, and it is social media, so I try and talk to people as opposed in the past where I was just more a consumer, trying to network. Social media. And we've got, training, traveling, breed dogs, all kinds of things. Just, if you want to connect, we can connect on there and go from there.
All right. Well, Brody, I'm going to put you back in the green room. I appreciate you coming on. If you don't mind hanging out for a second, we'll throw the exit video up, and I'll be with you in just a second.
Okay, no problem. Anytime, man.
I appreciate it, Brody.
All right, thank you. You as well.
Bye. All right. Yeah, I enjoyed this to death. I mean, mixed martial arts is huge with the military guys. I know a lot of guys that fought competitively on the military side. I knew a few guys that pushed past the military side, but I got a lot of respect for all of them. So anytime I get the opportunity to have a fighter on, I am definitely going to do it, just because I know how hard it is. And I know that in that industry, you have to have the love for what you're doing. It doesn't come just about the money and everything else that goes along with it. It's the passion to be a warrior. And so I appreciate it. I hope all of y'all enjoy this as much as I do. I appreciate y'all watching, man. Make sure you follow me. Have a great day. Remember, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick its ass.